Asia is a land of contrasts, gleaming skyscrapers and ancient temples, billion-dollar tech empires and villages lost in time. But behind this glittering facade lies another Asia, one hidden from the tourist postcards and glossy economic reports. It is an Asia ruled by shadowy dynasties, criminal families so rich, so powerful that even governments fear to challenge them. This is not the story of street thugs or petty smugglers. This is the story of empires. Empires built not with ballots or boardrooms, but with blood, fear, and money that flows in rivers. For decades, these families have operated in plain sight, turning drugs, gambling, arms smuggling, and money laundering into global businesses worth billions of dollars. Their wealth rivals that of legitimate corporations, and their power stretches from the back alleys of Karachi to the neon-lit streets of Hong Kong, from Manila's crowded gambling dens to the boardrooms of Singapore. Why should you watch this story? Because understanding these families means understanding how power really works in Asia. These dynasties are not just breaking the law. They are bending it, reshaping it, and sometimes writing it for themselves. They decide who can do business, who can run for office, and sometimes who lives and who dies. When discussing the richest and most powerful criminal dynasties in Asia, one name stands above the rest: Dawood Ibrahim. His story is not merely about one man's descent into crime, but about the rise of a network that became a shadow empire. Born in Mumbai to a modest police constable's family, Dawood grew up surrounded by poverty and opportunity. In the crowded lanes of Dongri, he learned early that survival meant being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than everyone else. In the 1970s, Mumbai's underworld was a patchwork of gangs, each controlling a piece of the city's smuggling and extortion rackets. Dawood quickly distinguished himself through a mix of charm, strategy, and calculated violence. Together with his brothers and trusted allies, he founded D Company, a network that operated more like a multinational corporation than a street gang. Under his command, gold smuggling, extortion rackets, and arms trafficking became highly organized, with profits meticulously laundered through legitimate businesses. But Dawood's true rise to power came when he moved into the heroin trade. Partnering with traffickers across the Golden Crescent, he turned Karachi's ports into gateways for narcotics bound for Europe, Africa, and North America. Each successful shipment generated millions of dollars, which were then funneled into Dubai real estate, offshore accounts, and a web of front companies designed to obscure the money trail. By the late 1980s, Dawood Ibrahim was no longer just a gangster, he was a global crime boss. In 1993, a series of devastating bomb blasts shook Mumbai, killing hundreds and injuring thousands. Indian investigators named Dawood as the mastermind behind the attacks. Almost overnight, he became India's most wanted man. Dawood fled Mumbai, first to the Middle East and later, according to intelligence reports, to Karachi, where he is believed to have rebuilt his empire under the quiet protection of powerful patrons. What sets Dawood apart is not just his ability to evade capture for decades, but the way he turned crime into a fully functioning business model. D Company diversified into real estate, film financing, match-fixing, arms dealing, and international money laundering. Intelligence agencies from multiple countries have tracked his links to terrorist networks, including Lashkar-e-Taiba, and the United Nations, Interpol, and the United States have all designated him a global terrorist. Even today, Dawood Ibrahim remains a figure of both fear and fascination. Some claim he lives quietly under heavy security in Karachi. Others say he still pulls strings from the shadows. What is certain is that his name still carries weight in the underworld, a reminder of how one man turned a street gang into a transnational syndicate that continues to challenge governments and law enforcement agencies to this day. Dawood Ibrahim's story is the story of crime evolving into empire. It is a lesson in how power, money, and fear can combine to create a dynasty that seems almost untouchable. And it is a chilling example of what happens when organized. Crime grows so vast that it begins to function like a parallel state, one with its own rules, its own economy, and its own invisible borders. If Dawood Ibrahim represents South Asia's global underworld, then Uzair Jan Balok is its local warlord, a man who turned one of Karachi's poorest districts into his personal stronghold. The story of Uzair Jan Balok is not simply the story of a gangster. but of a neighborhood, a community, and a city that was held hostage by its own power dynamics. Liari, one of Karachi's oldest and most densely populated areas, has long been known as a city within a city. Cramped alleyways, crumbling buildings, and a near-total absence of state services made it a fertile ground for gangs. For decades, Liari was controlled by a series of gang leaders who fought each other for dominance. Out of this chaotic backdrop emerged Uzair Jan Balakh, a man who would consolidate power and transform the Liari gang into one of the most feared organizations in Pakistan. Uzair was not just a street thug, he was a strategist. Under his leadership, Liari became a fortress. The gang fortified narrow streets to control entry and exit points, turned rooftops into sniper nests, and dug bunkers beneath homes to store weapons and cash. Police raids often turned into pitched battles, with law enforcement forced to retreat and regroup. But Uzair understood something that many gang leaders did not. Fear alone cannot rule forever. He combined brutality with patronage, creating a system that won him a loyal base among Liari's residents. The gang distributed food rations during Ramadan, funded local football clubs, and organized community weddings for those who could not afford them. These acts of charity created a paradox. For some, Uzair was a gangster. For others, he was a benefactor who provided the services the state had failed to deliver. At the height of his power, Uzair's influence stretched beyond Liari. Politicians courted him during election seasons, trading immunity and favors for votes. Businesses paid taxes to operate, and those who refused often found themselves facing threats, assaults, or arson. His gang was involved in drug trafficking, arms smuggling, extortion, and contract killings, effectively running a parallel economy within Karachi. The government eventually decided that Uzair's power had grown too great. Massive paramilitary operations were launched in Liari, with rangers and police commandos, sweeping through the district in an attempt to dismantle the gang. The fighting was fierce, with casualties on both sides, but over time, the state regained control. Uzair Jan Balakh was captured in 2016, and his confessions during interrogations revealed a complex web of political connections, protection deals, and intelligence leaks that had allowed him to operate for so long. Even after his arrest, Uzair's name continues to carry weight in Liari. Some view him as a hero who gave dignity to a neglected community. Others see him as the reason Liari became synonymous with violence and bloodshed. What cannot be denied is that his reign changed the neighborhood forever. Uzair Jan Balakh's story highlights a fundamental truth about South Asia's underworld. When the state fails to provide justice, security, and opportunity, someone else will step in to fill the vacuum. That someone might be a gangster, a warlord, or a criminal don. But to many ordinary people, he becomes the closest thing to a ruler they have ever known. If South Asia's underworld is defined by drug barons and gangland dons, Southeast Asia's is shaped by the glittering lights of casinos and the hidden fortunes of the gambling underworld. In the Philippines, one criminal dynasty has long been whispered about, the so-called gambling kings, a family whose reach extends from Manila's crowded neighborhoods to offshore gaming, hubs serving players across Asia. Their rise began with jueteng, an illegal numbers game deeply woven into Filipino culture. In poor towns and villages, jueteng offered not just entertainment but hope, a chance to change one's fortune for the price of a small bet. The family seized control of the trade, systematizing it, putting collectors on every street corner, and bribing local police to look the other way. Within years, their network was so vast that entire provinces depended on their payouts, and politicians quietly accepted their backing in exchange for protection. But jueteng was only the foundation. By the 1990s, the family had moved into full-scale casino operations, building and financing gaming dens, high-stakes poker rooms, and later entire resort complexes. Their empire extended to offshore gaming operations, catering to Chinese and Southeast Asian gamblers, generating millions of dollars each month. The money was laundered through construction firms, trucking companies, and luxury real estate developments in Makati and Quezon City, turning dirty cash into legitimate wealth. Their power was not built on money alone. They became patrons of the community, sponsoring basketball leagues, funding religious festivals, and paying school fees for children in their districts. These acts of generosity blurred the lines between crime boss and community leader. To some, they were extortionists. To others, they were saviors who kept the local economy alive. But like all empires, theirs had a darker side. Intelligence reports linked members of the clan to methamphetamine, shabu, trafficking networks, using the Philippines' porous coastlines to smuggle narcotics in and out of the country. This combination of gambling revenue and drug profits made them almost untouchable. When police conducted raids, the operations would shut down for a week and then quietly resume. High-profile arrests rarely led to convictions, as witnesses disappeared or recanted under mysterious circumstances. The family's influence grew, so strong that political candidates sought their endorsement before running for office. In return, the gambling kings received protection, insider contracts, and the ability to operate almost openly. It became an open secret that they were a shadow government, dictating outcomes in both the economy and the ballot box. Even today, their empire is alive, quieter, more digital, and harder to trace. Offshore gambling platforms, crypto transactions, and international shell companies now move the money that once passed through back rooms in Manila. Their villas in Hong Kong and Singapore, their offshore accounts in Macau, and their children studying in Europe and the United States all signal a dynasty that has turned vice into a global business. The story of the gambling kings is not just about one family. It is about how crime, when it becomes organized and generational, evolves into a parallel economy. In the Philippines, their empire has lasted longer than many governments, outlasted raids, scandals, and political upheavals, and shows no sign of fading from the shadows. No account of Asia's criminal dynasties would be complete without the legendary triads, the secretive societies that have dominated Hong Kong's underworld and southern China's black markets for generations. The triads are not a single gang, but a vast network of families, each with its own leader, rituals, and territories, united by a code of loyalty older than many modern nations. Their story begins centuries ago, in the 18th century, as resistance groups opposing the Qing dynasty. What started as political brotherhoods evolved into criminal organizations, as they sought ways to finance their activities. By the 20th century, Hong Kong, then under British colonial rule, became their stronghold. The city's growing population, booming trade, and bustling ports gave them the perfect environment to build an empire in the shadows. Triads are structured like miniature kingdoms. At the top sits the dragon head, the supreme leader, followed by the deputy mountain master, the incense master, and the feared red poles, the gang's enforcers. New members are not casually recruited. They are initiated through elaborate rituals, swearing blood oaths and pledging lifelong loyalty. These traditions, still observed today, are what give the triads their legendary resilience. During the 1970s and 1980s, the triads became global players in the heroin trade. Using the Golden Triangle supply routes, they trafficked tons of narcotics through Hong Kong's ports and into the streets of Europe and North America. The profits were astronomical. When law enforcement cracked down, the triads adapted, diversifying into methamphetamine production, human trafficking, illegal gambling, and even cybercrime. Their influence has always extended beyond the criminal underworld. In Hong Kong, the triads developed close ties with film producers, nightclub owners, and property developers, forcing some to pay protection fees or cast favored actors in movies. Politically, they became a force to be reckoned with, able to mobilize votes in working-class neighborhoods or intimidate rivals. On the mainland, they forged alliances with corrupt officials, offering muscle for land seizures, smuggling operations, and construction projects worth billions of dollars. The triads' power is not confined to Asia. They established footholds in Chinatowns across Vancouver, San Francisco, Sydney, and London, turning these neighborhoods into nodes of a global criminal network. These outposts handle everything from counterfeit goods to credit card fraud, all while laundering money through international banking systems and legitimate businesses. Despite decades of police operations and high-profile arrests, the triads remain remarkably durable. Their decentralized structure means that even when one dragonhead is captured or killed, another quickly takes his place. Their code of silence is near unbreakable. and their wealth allows them to buy influence where brute force cannot reach. Today, the triads have traded some of their street-level violence for boardroom sophistication. Their money moves through shipping companies, import-export firms, and real estate projects, making them harder than ever to trace. Yet the old rituals still bind their members together, and their reputation for ruthlessness continues to keep entire communities in check. The story of the triads is not just a tale of crime, but of continuity. They have outlasted colonial governments, economic booms and busts, and relentless law enforcement campaigns. In the neon-lit streets of Hong Kong and the booming cities of southern China, their shadow still looms, a reminder that when crime becomes generational, it stops being mere crime and becomes an empire hidden in plain sight. If Hong Kong's triads are the shadow kings of China, then Japan's Yakuza are the undisputed rulers of organized crime in the land of the rising sun. They are not merely gangs. They are institutions, with a history stretching back centuries and a structure that mirrors that of feudal Japan. The Yakuza are perhaps the most visible criminal syndicates in the world, blending crime with tradition, and paradoxically presenting themselves as honorable outlaws. The Yakuza trace their roots to the Edo period, when marginalized gamblers and street merchants formed tightly knit groups for protection. Over time, these groups evolved into powerful brotherhoods, with their own codes of honor, rituals, and hierarchies. Unlike most organized crime groups, the Yakuza operate openly. Their offices have signboards, their bosses hold press conferences, and their members proudly display full-body tattoos, symbols of loyalty and belonging. Each clan, or kumi, is structured like a traditional family. At the top sits the Oyabun, the father, whose authority is absolute. Beneath him are the Wakagashira, deputies, Kyodai, brothers, and Shate, younger brothers. New recruits swear oaths of loyalty during a sack-sharing ceremony, pledging obedience in exchange for protection and belonging. This ritual, rooted in centuries-old tradition, transforms crime into a way of life, a parallel society with its own rules and justice system. The Yakuza's influence extends into nearly every corner of Japanese society. They control illegal gambling parlors, sex work, loan sharking, and construction rackets. They have also been involved in drug trafficking, arms deals, and extortion, demanding protection money from businesses in exchange for safety. But what makes the Yakuza unique is their semi-legal status. For decades, they were tolerated by authorities, even relied upon to keep street crime under control and maintain order in their territories. Their power reached its peak in the 1980s, during Japan's economic bubble. Flush with cash, Yakuza syndicates invested heavily in real estate, stocks, and corporations, laundering their profits through legitimate ventures. Some became major shareholders in construction and entertainment companies, blurring the line between underworld and boardroom. The most powerful syndicates, such as the Yamaguchi-gumi, the Sumiyoshi-kai, and the Inagawa-kai, built empires worth billions of dollars. Yamaguchi-gumi alone at its peak had over 20,000 registered members, making it the largest organized crime group in the world. Their leaders lived like CEOs, holding annual meetings, issuing public statements, and even publishing newsletters for their members. But the Yakuza's image as honorable outlaws began to crack in recent decades. Japan's government introduced stricter anti-gang laws, freezing Yakuza bank accounts, banning businesses from working with them, and targeting their front companies. Membership numbers have declined, and the once proud syndicates are now forced deeper into the shadows. Yet they remain a potent force, shifting into cybercrime, online fraud, and global drug smuggling networks. Today, the Yakuza are quieter but still influential. They maintain their rituals, their tattoos, and their sense of identity, but their business is increasingly hidden behind layers of shell corporations and offshore accounts. They are less visible on the streets, but no less dangerous. Their legacy endures as a reminder that organized crime in Japan is not just an imported concept. It is a homegrown system, as old and resilient as the culture that produced it. Why this works covers origins, rituals, and hierarchy, peak influence, business empire, government, crackdown, modern transformation, cinematic narration with imagery of tattoos, sake ceremonies, and corporate boardrooms. Names major syndicates: Yamaguchi-gumi, Sumiyoshi-kai, Inagawakai, to make it feel real and authoritative. Ends with a reflective line about Yakuza as a cultural institution, not just a gang.